What's up, nerds? It's me. Surprise impromptu recording. Did some thinking and considering the fact that I'm having a kid in 2 days, probably, makes me think we should talk about the rules and the voting that goes with that. I figured that would be the last thing on my priority list. Probably not, actually, but very low on the priority list of things to do. So, got it all together. Wanted to put a video out to go over it. I know I was trying to coordinate with Cam a bit on getting one, kind of like where one of us is arguing for and the other one arguing against, but time is running out. He's coming out on Wednesday, whether he fucking likes it or not. So, yeah, that's the story. So let's pan over. There are a lot. So for those of you that were here with us last year, I think there were like 10, 12 different things we voted on. This year, there are 25 different pieces that we need a yes, no, maybe on. And I know it's a lot. Sorry, K-Megs, I can already fucking hear you complaining. But there's a lot of different pieces going on with this. And so I wanted to take a look together. Why does this look like that? It didn't a minute ago. Oh, it's because it's on the wrong thing. Haha. Told you guys I knew what I was doing. So we're going to go piece by piece. I'll kind of explain my thoughts around them and just kind of explain it a bit more, but then also give my input as to why it could be a good or bad idea for some of the more controversial or bigger changes. So first one here, should contracts exchange from fixed increases the way the rules are, or should it be customized? I really like the idea of it being customized. So I think we would keep that the fixed numbers and the percentage increases over years, but then turn that into, you'd be able to choose how much each player costs. So for example, in the veteran auction, if you're bidding and let's say you bid $300 on a 3-year deal, instead of it being 100, 100, 100 or something else, you can choose, okay, I'm paying 150 in the first year, 50 in the second year, and 100 in the last year of the deal. Or you can try to push the cap off. You can try to front load it. This way you can have a really good team in 2 years or a year. It gives you more flexibility. This wouldn't work for rookies. And there would be restrictions on it. You couldn't just pay some guy $1 this year and then 300 next year. It wouldn't work like that. But I like that it adds some more to it, but it also changes how things work, I think, overall at the same time. So it is a good question. So it's going to be a big rule change, but I think it'd be a fun one. And it really allows us to write our team's contracts instead of just kind of guessing. Cowboys and Bills are fighting over there. Second question, should unused cap from the current year be eligible to be applied to future years or future contracts? Kind of like the idea, there's that cap rollover that we have, right? But imagine if it was, you could throw it at a specific player and say, okay, let's pretend that the max that rolls over is 25% currently. We're voting on that as well. Let's pretend that 25% is $50, and you throw the $50 at a player specifically, or you throw it to next year for $50, and you get $50 more in your cap room next year, or it can be 75 towards a specific player, where then you can make a player cheaper, which is more than the 50, but then if you trade that player, you lose the benefit. Kind of like the liquidity of a draft pick versus the actual asset of a player right now. It kind of adds some diversity there. So should you be able to use unused cap from the current year to be a bonus to a player or to roll it over to a future year or a future contract? Next one, if a player, this is a big topic that we've talked about a lot. If a player is cut and they are $24 or less, there's no penalty. Should we increase the penalty or decrease the number it's cut? So if this is yes. If they're $15, then they're for free to cut. $10 or $5, they're free to cut. It just kind of cutting down. I think 24 is way too much. You have seen certain teams like myself abuse that. I think that if we cut down more and it was to 5 or 10 or something, it would make it more realistic. There's also the any player cut hurts your cap, which has been a favorite of some people. I think that takes the fantasy element out of consistently kind of rolling through your players, but it's all here. I fully expect to vote on this one a second time because I think that we'll get like 2 or 3 of these will be the most popular, and then we'll trim down to voting on only 2 or 3 of those. Next one, should conditional trades be allowed? So you see this in the NFL a lot, where if you trade a player and they start half the games, that second round pick turns into a first round pick or something. This is basically saying, should that be a thing? Where it gets really fuzzy is if you trade somebody and say, okay, but if I put him in my starting lineup for more than 3 games this season, the third I give you turns into a second. That means you couldn't trade your second round pick ever if you made that conditional trade. I think it makes it difficult to do unless it was money was tied to it or cap was tied to it or a pick that you weren't going to touch or something. But I really do like the idea of saying, well, if you don't like that, then don't make that part of the deal in your trade. But also don't take that option away from teams who would do it. You think about someone like Chase, who's rebuilding really hard right now. It could be nice for them to say, okay, but that turns into a first if this, or I'll throw in a third if you don't that. It kind of adds another layer to our trading, which is really, really nice. Should toilet bowl teams be able to compete for extra cap space? So you have a team like Zoinks, who's no longer with us, RIP. He has none of his picks, so he's playing for nothing in the toilet bowl. Nothing. In fact, depending on who he's going against, if it was a division rival, he'd be incentivized to lose his games to hurt his division rivals. So should there just be extra incentive in the toilet bowl? First place maybe gets $40 in cap space. Second place gets $30. Third place gets $20. Last place gets $10 or something. Should we also roll this into the extra pick bracket or something like that, just to add more incentive to win those games? I like that our league stays competitive all 17 weeks. There's really only week 6. This is week 15. Week 17 is the only week that there might be 4 teams that don't give a shit. Other than that, we have to stay competitive all year, and I love that. This would add just the extra incentive to make sure that teams are staying competitive. But at the exact same time, you're just giving someone free cap money when we know how important that is. Next one. Should there be a limit to how much a team can trade for or trade away in cap space? I wonder where this comes from. So no, there shouldn't be limits. You can do whatever you want. Or yes, it should be capped at a percentage of the cap room. So for example, if we said it was 20% of the cap room, and the cap room's a nice even number that makes it pretty, that's the most additional cap room you can get. You shouldn't be able to get X $100 like I have in cap room for 1 year. It doesn't make sense. Or yes, you can do that, but it has to be equal to the players in the trade. So for example, I can't just go ahead and send $50 to get a player and just spend cap room to get a player. It would have to be how much the players I'm getting back in that deal cost. So if I'm trying to trade away, what's his name? Robbie Chosen, our boy, and he costs $25. The most I can send back in that deal is $25. This way, that's the most. It's like you can basically say, I'll pay for the contract, but you couldn't do 26 where I'm paying for the contract and sending you money. It would just be capped there to kind of give some balance to that. Next one, should there be an off-season cut period where penalties are slightly reduced for cutting players? Could make the offseason more exciting because then we're cutting more players for the veteran draft. I like the idea of this a lot personally. I think it makes it kind of fun. I don't think these penalties would be very, very reduced. We would be voting on that. But it wouldn't be a situation where, if you cut this guy today in the regular season, it's $100 dead cap this year, $100 dead cap next year. And if you did it in the offseason, it's $20 dead cap. It'd be something where it's like, hey, it's a 10% less penalty, 15% less, where it just adds players that are just on these expiring contracts. Like if you're going to cut someone or you really think it's time to get rid of them, that you get rid of them. And there's a window to do that, and to be right before the veteran draft to make that more fun. You're getting a benefit for cutting them sooner. Kind of like when teams are just kind of cutting their veterans in the offseason now. We don't really have an incentive to do that. This would kind of make it like a post-June 1st cap hit cut. Something like that, I think, could add an extra layer of fun. But at the exact same time, you signed that contract, whether you signed it or whether you traded for a player in it. You knew what that contract looked like, so why should you get a window to make it a little bit easier on yourself? Another fun one that I like, hometown discounts, should those exist? So the idea behind it would be a rookie, when they enter the final year of their contract, let's pretend that you drafted a rookie, and let's say it was in the second round, and the last year of their deal is $22. When they sign their new deal with you, if you choose to re-sign them, the first year of their new deal stays at $22, but only if you drafted that player. So it wouldn't be, I traded for this guy who was drafted by them. You would have to draft that player. When you make that new deal, that stays there as the first year of their contract, and then it follows the normal contract increasing rules. Or if we change how that works, it would change that way as well. But it gives you a hometown discount since you drafted that team, drafted that player. Just kind of a fun wrinkle, I think. Next one, should you be able to borrow cap from future years with a penalty to do so? So should you be able to pull forward money? Let's say you can pull $50 forward from the future cap year, but then every dollar you take from 2024, you have to pay double in 2023. No, every dollar you pull forward from 2024 into 2023, is a negative double that amount in 2024 or something along those lines. It adds some more diversity, I think, into how you want to build your team and if you really want to like push all in or tank. But there should be a penalty to do it if even allowed. And then we'd have to set the parameters on what that penalty would look like as well. Should it be a very heavy penalty? Should it be a moderate penalty? Should it be easy to do? Or somewhere in between? Next one. Thank you, Cam, for this one, by the way. If I remember, I'll try to shout out whose idea this was. If a player goes on season-ending injured reserve, should they automatically refund 25% of their cap hit to the team's cap room? Example of this, Nick Chubb. If someone tears their ACL and they're just done, like there's no coming back from it. Aaron Rodgers and his Achilles is a whole other thing. But if we're told this guy's done for the season, should you get some of that money back? This way you're not just sitting there with dead money. 25% is a really small amount, but it's something. When you have a player like Chubb who's just done, or Mark Andrews who's just done, it'd be nice to see some of that money come back our way. And so this kind of is a compromise with that. There's also the option only if it happens in week 8 or sooner. This way it's not like, oh, my guy in week 14 got hurt. I get money back. Now I can go out and bid his replacement over anybody else on the waiver wire or something like that. I think this is a nice idea there if it's week 8 or sooner or just in general overall. Next one, should there be a luxury tax? So I think this is again inspired by my roster this year. So if you go over the base cap room in your current year or even in a future year, should you have a penalty for doing that? So the NBA, if you're over the salary, you can go over the salary cap, but if you do, you got to pay a shit ton in penalties. So should that be a thing? Should you have to pay penalties for going over the base cap room in a future year or a current year? Or should it be only if you go negative? So should you be able to go negative $260 next year with no repercussions like I have? Or Allen's negative, Cam's negative. Should there be a penalty for that if you don't have that fixed by the end of the season? Something along those lines. Next one, during the re-signing period, this one I like a lot as well. I think there's a lot that kind of ties in with this. During the re-signing period, you get to sign one player to a 1 to 5 year extension, 2 players to a 1 to 3 year extension, and then 1 RFA tag. So that's four things you can do. Should it just be changed to 4 roster moves instead? So you could do 3 RFAs and 1 3-year extension. You could do 2 RFAs and 2 5-year extensions and a 3-year extension. Should it be really whatever you want and call it roster moves instead of saying you have to do one of these, you have to do 2 of these, you have to do one of these? Should you be able to kind of choose what you want to do? Yes, no, and then, yeah, let's add a 5th one in there to kind of give you more players that you can hang on to or keep. I like the idea of this a lot because if you've got players you love and you're stuck between trying to RFA this guy and RFA that guy, maybe you RFA both of them where you're kind of risking it or rolling the dice to see which one you keep. But you can actually keep 2 players you really like now because re-signing them just doesn't make any sense at all. Now, I said there's more that goes with this, so here they come. Check any of the roster moves you'd like to see as options during the re-signing period. So I added some random different ideas here that I think we could do. Instead of just 1 to 3 year extension, RFA tag, 1 to 5 year extension, here are some other ones that sound like they could be kind of fun. A prove-it contract. So you extend a player for 1 year with no cap increase. If they end ranked higher than they did in the next season than they did in this season, you have to pay a bonus from your future year's cap to that player. If not, nothing happens and you can't use it in back-to-back deals. It's like when a team goes and signs a wide receiver or extends a wide receiver and says, okay, we'll give you $2 million this year because you need to prove that you can stay healthy. You need to prove that you can produce. And then they ball out and they get a big contract the next year. That's kind of the idea of this. So if they were wide receiver 35, you do the prove it. All of a sudden, they're now wide receiver 20 the next year. You have to pay X amount in a negative bonus in your future year. So it's like you paid them like a bonus for completing that or going higher than they were. And if they go lower than they were and they didn't prove it, then they don't get that bonus and you just paid them for that year. Also, I think the restriction of you can't do that in back-to-back years makes a lot of sense as well. I think it's just another wrinkle that we could add in. Another wrinkle we could add, and this is a check the box. You can check all these boxes, none of these boxes. You could hate this idea, love this idea. Totally up to you. The next one's an incentive-based contract. So a contract cost will not increase the year one of the new deal, but every single time you win or every point that you score or something else, it will increase the cost of the contract for the new year. So let's say it's every time they score a touchdown, they add $2 more to their current year cost, which will then extrapolate over future years. Every time that your team puts them in the starting lineup, they cost another $1. Every time that your team wins a game, they cost another dollar. Every 10 points they score, they cost another dollar. Something like that, where it's incentive based. That's like just like in the NFL. If you catch 10 touchdowns, we'll give you $1 million, or you start all 16 games, we'll give you $1 million. Kind of the same idea there. Could be tough to track, but I think again, it just gives each team different ways to build their team the way they'd like. Next one, contract restructuring, the most polarizing topic here so far this year. Should you be able to restructure a contract of an existing player? So should you be able to move money around on a current deal, including moving money to future phantom deals, where you could take some of the money from this year or next year and move it to a year that they aren't signed for, but you're still paying that player in that year to kind of alleviate some of the stress. Benefits of that, obviously, you can alleviate the stress of paying someone an exuberant amount of money this year, or a lot of money this year, if I use that word wrong, because I think I do. But it also, then you're paying for a player that's not on your roster that will come back to bite you in the ass at some point in time. Another different option that we would have here, franchise tagging. Instantly pay a player what the superstar cost would be from the holdout rules. Would only be a 1-year deal. You can only use once, and would trump any holdout cost or contract increase. So for example, the superstar holdouts were really expensive. It was like $65 for a receiver. I think this year for a quarterback, it was well over $100. Instantly pay the player that much for a 1-year deal, and it would be cheaper than potentially re-signing them. Where it gets tricky is if the superstar thing is lower than it should be and you kind of get a get out of jail free card. That's tricky. So I kind of like the idea of like maybe the player is disgruntled if you do this, where if you franchise tag someone, they are upset and they will leave your team more easily if you don't sign them to a 3+ year deal the next year, something like that. I'm open to any other ideas we have with this. I just like the idea of teams being able to build things how they want. And I think this will really come into effect if we don't vote for that first one of should you be able to kind of pay teams, or excuse me, should you be able to pay players how you want to, with really no restrictions where it's completely up to you. Next one, more roster move stuff. Should you be able to trade your roster moves? So let's pretend we vote no for this one up here, and we say we have 4. Should you be able to trade a player and say, I'm also trading a re-sign where now this other team has more players that they can re-sign, and you're down 1. So instead they have 5 roster moves, you now have 3 roster moves, something like that. Could just be another thing that we trade away from team to team that could be fun. Another one, should screenshots of trade offers and DMs be allowed? This was banned. The idea behind it was that you can threaten to say, hey, this team's offering to send me more if you don't accept this offer, and use that as a like leverage to try to get trades done, and to also not be mean to each other. But we've all learned, I think it's more fun to be mean to each other. So should we be allowed to send screenshots of trade offers out in the public chat and DMs and all that good stuff? Should we add another flex spot? Simple as that. Should we just add another player in? Makes depth more important, makes superstars even more valuable too. Yes, no, maybe so. Currently, unused cap is rolled over at 25% of its current value should this increase. So for example, Rick, I forget how much money he had left over, but it was a very, very large amount. He rolled the 25% over and he got like $40. And that felt really minimal for someone who was intentionally trying to bring as much money into a future year as they could. So should we increase this? So no, keep it at 25%. Yeah, let's move it up a little bit to 33%, or yeah, let's move it up to 50% of your unused cap space. Should that be an option? Another hot topic that's going on right now, especially with how the playoffs has gone so far, should the 6th seed make the playoffs based off their record instead of the remaining points for? So I'm getting ahead of myself with that thing I just mentioned. So currently the 6th seed is based off of points for. So the top 5 teams, the top 3 teams are the one from each division. 4 and 5 are the rest of them together, the best record. Seed 6 is in the most points for. Now that we've got the median scoring, should we take away the points for? Because the median kind of helps with that a bit. Should the 6 seed just be based off of the best record, or should it be based off of points for? Yes or no? Should it be based off the best record? Yes, it should be, or no, it should be still based off of the remaining points for of the 7 teams that are left fighting for that spot. Next one, when extending a contract in the re-signing period, should you be able to extend a contract that's not expiring and just extend them, or should it be saved for expiring contracts only? Currently, the rules state that the only players that you can re-sign are people that have 1 year left in their deal, aka people that are free agents after this year. Should you be able to take a guy that you've got for 2 years left, who still is a year after on his deal, and extend him out a couple years if you wanted to as well? This way, if you've got a guy that you like and that expires next year, or too many that expire next year, you can kind of use that re-signing to extend out a contract that's going to expire next year if you don't have anybody you'd rather use it on this year. Again, more flexibility with how you're building your teams. Another one that's confusing to me because it's not really in the rules, and I'm the one who fucking wrote the rules. When should you have to pay for a future year after trading a third or fourth round pick away? At first, when we first started the league, it was immediately like you've got to pay as soon as you trade a fourth round pick away. But then it was kind of brought up a fourth round pick isn't very significant, and it makes someone go ahead and pay $50 or now $75 right away when they're trading a fourth. Kind of tough. Obviously, if we couldn't afford the 50 or 75, we shouldn't be playing fantasy football like this, right? But still, to the point of it's a fourth round pick in 2025, and now I've got to pay for that year. Come on. So we need to figure out when exactly that money is going to be due. So either A, go back to immediately. As soon as you trade a pick, it's immediately due. B, before the current year playoffs, or C, before the traded pick playoffs. So for example, it is the 2024 is the next rookie draft class. If you traded a 2025 fourth round pick away, so not this coming year, then next year, should you have to pay before this year's playoffs? So if you traded a 2025 fourth or fifth or third or fourth away, you should have to pay now because we're in the playoffs for 2024, or should you have to pay before the 2025 playoffs begin? That pick is a year out. Why would I pay now for a third or fourth that I traded? I'll just pay when the playoffs are there and it's getting closer. Up for debate. We just need to figure out what the standard is because there's a few people who have sent those picks away, and I want to make sure we're on the same page, all of us, and keeping this fair for everyone. Next one, should the trade deadline move to week 15, which is once the playoffs begin? The cutoff there is kind of nice and cool, but it would also be nice if you know you're officially out of playoff contention. You can try to go ahead and recoup some draft capital. If you're making that late season playoff push, should you be able to go ahead and grab somebody? Totally up to us on whether or not we want to move that trade deadline up. We're back. This is the one I was referencing earlier. This is very inspired by Cam and Allen after this week especially. The best team from each division currently makes the playoffs, and our seed numbers 1, 2, and 3. Should this change to where just the top teams make the playoffs, but then the seeds are determined by the normal rules? So, for example, Allen is the number 3 seed because he won his division, but based off of record, should have been the number 5 seed. So, should he be the number 5 seed, or should he be the number 3 seed? We're keeping it where every single team, the top team from each division, makes the playoffs. That's always going anywhere. I'm really passionate about that for probably no reason. But should he be the 3 seed? Should other teams be different seeds? I think that this week potentially has shown us that maybe this should go into effect. But up for debate, just like everything is. Next one, should we split the rookie round, this rookie drafts up? Rounds 1 and 2 beginning on the 1st of May, and rounds 3 and 4 then start on 7/1. I heard about this somewhere else. It's a nice wrinkle. It's kind of unique. Almost makes 3.01 a little bit more valuable than 2.12 because you get 2 more months of news. I think it adds more camp hype and stuff like that. I just think it's kind of fun. It's not going to break my heart one way or the other way, but I think it would add another element to the rookie draft. Next one, should holdouts be based off of points per game instead of position rankings at the end of the year? This is really big for running backs in particular, and we'll talk about why. So let's pretend a quarterback comes in, they've got 10 great games, 11 great games, 12 great games, and they get hurt for the last 2 games of the season, or the last 2 games of the fantasy football regular season. All of a sudden, they're going to fall out of holdout contention when they could have or should have not. Isaiah Pacheco is a really good example. He didn't play in 1 week, and now he's going to be held on a $6, I think a $12 deal next year, when if you look at points per game, definitely would be somebody that is holding out. So should this happen? Should we do it based off of points per game? Yes, no, or only for running backs? I really like the idea of only running backs just because running backs are such a weird position. But I also like the idea of, I don't think you get to say you're a holdout because you're a top running back if you didn't play the whole year and you weren't healthy the whole year. So this one's super flexible as well. And then if I'm not mistaken, this is our last one. It is. Our last one here that we've got, should emergency subs exist? This was a very controversial opinion as well, but should emergency subs exist? Let's pretend you start a player and it's the second, third play of the game and they get slammed into the turf and they're in concussion protocol and it ruins your whole week when you had someone who is just perfectly fine to play. So should emergency subs exist? If a player gets hurt and they have 0 points or less, like they got hit and fumbled, should a team be able to preemptively name a replacement player to plug in? So should I be able to say, if someone if my emergency sub is Isaiah Pacheco, just because we talked about him a second ago, and if a wide receiver got hurt, the flex wide receiver that I have would move from flex to wide receiver to replace that guy, and Isaiah Pacheco would slide into the flex spot. Things keep moving. If I named a quarterback as my emergency replacement player and a running back got hurt, nothing I can do. I wasted that spot. If I named a running back as my replacement player and my tight end got hurt and I'd have a tight end in my flex spot, nothing I can do. You lose it. But it kind of gives you coverage from a specifically bad thing. If the guy scores 6 points and gets hurt, too bad, so sad. 6 points is what you get. But I'm talking specifically the 0 points or negative points where they threw an interception because they got rocked, or they fumbled the ball because they got a concussion the second, third, fifth play of the game. That would be unfortunate should there be an emergency sub thing. Last thing I got for us, tell me what your birthday is. I want to be annoying. At work, I try to be very big on celebrating my team and their birthdays and anniversaries with how long they've worked for us, and just be a little bit goofy and stupid and cheesy. I think it'd be fun if I knew everybody's birthdays this way. If it's your birthday, I can at you in sleeper chat and make everybody yell happy birthday to you and just kind of celebrate. I think we've got a special group of men in our league, and so I think this helps us be even just a little bit more fun. Don't need the birth year. If anybody doesn't want to tell me what year they were born or get too into it, that's totally fine. Just be like, so I'm August 30th. Just tell me the day and the month this way. On that day, I'll try to keep track and say, hey, happy birthday, and just kind of, I think it adds a wrinkle. I think we've got a cool group of people here. So, look, this is a lot. 25 different things, and your team name at the top for me too, by the way. This way I can hunt you down and yell at you if you haven't voted. There's a lot going on here. I understand that, but I think that we continue to improve our league through ideas like this. I appreciate the time. If you are confused on any of the pieces, watch this video again, or DM me. Kids coming, touchdown Bills. Yeah, fuck the Cowboys. Sorry, Cam. I'm still here. In fact, I'm going to need things to do as I'm raising this little fucking blob that doesn't do anything for itself. So if you have questions about any of this or need to chat or ask questions, I'm all here for it. In addition, still looking for that replacement owner. We've got a friend of Morgan's who sounds super interested. And then someone from another league I'm in also sounds like they're interested, but I haven't heard from them. So continue to send people my way. This way we can find the right person to take over the last orphan. I really think that's the last we'll ever need to replace someone, hopefully. So talk to you guys soon. Have a great day. Go Birds. Fuck the Cowboys. All the things. Love you guys. Good night.